Hello and welcome to the CoreBlox SiteMinder ToolBox version 1.0 demonstration. My name is Ben Stroud and I'm the lead developer for the CoreBlox SiteMinder ToolBox. Before we start, I'd like to give a little background on what the toolbox is and what it does. The toolbox enables seamless migration of policies across policy server environments. Migration topologies allow you to map CA SiteMinder policies across tiers, transform configuration values, and version the policies so that changes can be rolled back if required. This ensures that there is consistent policy data across environments and simplifies the introduction of new policies and policy server tiers. The toolbox is a client-side Java-based desktop application. It remotely connects to your existing policy server environments and uses the CA SiteMinder Java APIs to download, configure, and populate policy objects. Direct access to the policy server environments is not required, only network connectivity between the client application and the policy server environment. To install the toolbox, simply unzip the install files to a desired location and launch. The appropriate libraries and Java runtimes are bundled with the application. No prior installation of Java is needed for a Windows environment. In this demo, I'm going to walk you through a very simple use case, which will nonetheless touch on every aspect of the toolbox. In this use case, I have a dev environment which contains an authorization scheme which I would like to migrate to a QA environment. Before I execute the migration, I need to perform a transformation on the dev environment for it to function properly in the QA environment. Now, let's actually start using the application to accomplish this task. First screen you see when launching the application is the toolbox home screen. This screen allows you to access available tools in the toolbox as well as general settings for the application. As you can see, in version 1, we have two available tools, the migration tool and the snapshot manager. First, we'll walk through the migration tool and then come back to the snapshot manager. Before we get into the tools, let's first take a look at the settings for the application. Here you can access environments, security, and logging settings. The most important setting here, and the one that you're likely to use the most often, is the environments option. Normally, when you first install the toolbox, you'll have to start by creating some environments. For the purposes of this demo, I've already created a couple of environments and saved them to my local file system. Now let's take a look at the dev environment. Note that I'm prompted for a password at this point. Any password fields within an object's data set, such as an admin secret, that are written to file are encrypted using a master password at the point of file save. The first time the application tries to read from a file with encrypted fields, a user will be prompted for that original password. This encryption password can be different than your environment or policy passwords, so you can share environment configurations without sharing sensitive admin passwords. This also applies to any saved migrations. By default, the toolbox is configured to use a single master password when encrypting fields and can be changed or disabled through the security settings. I'll go ahead and enter my password. All right, once the environment fields are decrypted, you can make changes and verify that the environment is in fact accessible. You can also add, remove, and save environments from this screen. Let's go back and take a quick look at some of the other settings. In the security settings, you can set the master encryption password or even turn off encryption altogether. You can also choose which encryption algorithms you'd like to use. Now let's go back and take a look at logging. In the logging settings, you can configure the default logging directory, the maximum log size before rotation, and the number of rotations allowed to exist in the logging directory. You can also turn off logging altogether if you wish. Now let's go back to the use case. Remember that our use case is migrating an object from dev to QA. To accomplish this, I click on the migration tool. Here I can choose between starting from an existing migration or creating a new migration. First, we'll go through the new migration and then circle back to how existing migrations work. Here I choose my source and destination environments. These drop-downs contain any environments that you've created in the environment settings. The set of objects you can use to create a migration will be downloaded from the source server. My source is the dev environment. And my destination will be the QA environment. Hit next. This screen is where you can choose which objects from the source server you'd like to include in your migration. You can add, remove, and get a look at the object details from this screen. At this point, the objects are read-only. Let's add the object we created in the dev environment. First, we choose the type of object we'd like to add. A system, domain, global, or you can pick from all objects. Since I know the scheme that I want is a system object, I'll click system, and then the type of object is an auth scheme. Here we see the set of all schemes on the source server. To narrow it down, I can use the search option to look for the object I want. There we go. I select the object and click Finish. Note that the search option searches for any object with a name, description, or OID matching your search term. Now that I've selected my object, my migration is no longer empty. Note that even though I only selected a single auth scheme, my migration will also include any objects that use the auth scheme up to the domain. In this case, that means that I have a realm and a domain that were automatically included in my migration. This is to avoid problems with orphaned objects. You can remove these objects from the migration if you wish. For now, let's leave them in and take a look at my auth scheme. We can see here in the properties view that the auth scheme's parameter points to a dead URL. We can fix that in the next screen. Next. From this view, we can edit the object and make sure any environment-specific properties get properly updated. In this case, let's change that dev URL to one that works in our QA environment. Note that any edited fields are highlighted in green. And apply. Note the action option. You can update this object if it already exists in our destination environment, add or remove the object. You can also direct the tool to try and add the object, and if it already exists, do an update instead, or you can try and update an object and add it if it turns out it doesn't exist on the destination server. Once you're happy with your migration transformations, you can click Next. And here we get a summary view of exactly what changes will be attempted on your destination server during the migration. In this case, we can see that the My Portal Form auth parameter will be updated to QA from its current value, dev. Here you'll be prompted to save your migration. I'll go ahead and save it so that I don't have to rebuild this migration from scratch if I want to run it again against a different destination server. From this screen, we can actually execute the migration we've created if we so choose. Note the option to snapshot from this screen. If this option is enabled, the migration tool will automatically leverage the snapshot tool behind the scenes to take a snapshot of your destination server before any migration actually takes place. This means that you'll always have a known good configuration to roll back to should you change your mind about the migration. I'm going to go ahead and leave the snapshot enabled and start the migration. All right. Here we see the results of the migration, and they're all success. Now let's go back and take a look at the scheme object in the QA environment and make sure the migration really worked. I'll take a quick peek at the object through the migration tool. This time I'll pick QA as my source. Go through and add, once again, the system object scheme. Here's my object. Take a quick look, and yes, it is in fact QA. Now, let's say that you want to perform this migration again, or someone has sent you a migration that they've created, and you want to run it against one of your environments. This is where existing migrations can come in. So rather than pick new migration, I'll pick existing migration. Here you see all the migrations that are in the default migration directory. You can pick any directory you wish to store your migrations. I'm sticking with the default directory, and in it, I see the migration that I just created. Select it. Here you can add specific objects from the existing migration you just loaded. You can add them into this current migration, just like before. Most of the time, you'll want to choose the All Objects option from the existing migration, as I have here. But you have the option to choose just a subset of objects from your current migration, just like before. Note that with an existing migration, only a set of objects actually involved with the migration are saved. This enables the idea of least privilege. You don't have to share all of your environment's policies with someone to run a migration that you created, only those that are relevant to the migration. You can see the object there. From this point on, the existing migration workflow is the same as what you saw in the new migration workflow. So let's go back and say instead of wanting to reuse a migration, you actually want to roll back changes to a previous snapshot. Maybe a few weeks down the road, you realize that you made a mistake or you weren't happy with the results of your changes, and this is where the snapshot tool can come in handy. Here I have the option of managing the set of snapshots I currently have or managing my environments. In this case, I want to roll back to an environment, so I'll choose Manage Environments. Note here that I have the option to take a snapshot of my environments from the screen. This means that the snapshot tool can be used independently of the migration tool. So if you want to simply preserve the state of your environment before making any changes through any admin tool, you have that ability. For now, let's roll back to the snapshot that was automatically taken right before the migration I just performed. So I'll hit Revert to Snapshot, pick the one I just did, hit Rollback. I'll be warned that any changes since this migration will obviously be lost. Click Yes. Now we can see migration rollback is a success. Let's once again take a peek at the object through the migration tool to make sure the rollback worked. Let's again do new migration, pick QA as my source, pick my same scheme object once again, and we can see it's back to dev. There you have a simple demonstration of the CoreBlox SiteMinder ToolBox version 1.0. Thank you very much.